Welcome into your Weather Impact extended weekend forecast exclusively here on 13 WMAZ+. The main headline over the last 24 hours has been rain, and it will continue to be for the first part of your weekend. Let's go ahead and break down the full details and your event-specific forecast. A lot of events will be getting rescheduled, I do imagine. However, we are going to go ahead and give you a forecast about the events regardless of if they are going on or if they have been postponed or not. You can find full updates on 13WMAZ.com for all of the Christmas celebrations we have this weekend, the status of them in specific cities, and take a look and plan your weekend accordingly if you did have plans to head out to those Christmas celebrations. So after one day of not recording rainfall this past Wednesday, we recorded rainfall once again this past Thursday. So 3 out of the first 4 days of the month of December, we have recorded some form of rain. It wasn't too much as of Thursday, only 4/100ths of an inch of rain, but this was just kind of the beginning of what is going to be another widespread rainmaker to dump some impressive rainfall totals over central Georgia. So 4 days into the month, your total stands at 1.28 inches of rain, so over an inch and about a quarter of an inch of rain that we've received for this month, and that's already a total maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of over an inch above all the rainfall that we got in November. On average, we typically see just over 4 inches of rain for the month of December all time, and the record stands at just over 12.5 inches, so over a foot of rain that we got back exactly a decade ago in 2015. But I do imagine we're going to continue to see these white dots go up over the course of this weekend as we take into account the rainfall on December 5th and December 6th. And then by the time we get into the end of the weekend, we may have some good news to finally talk about. So for the entire year of 2025, over the last week or so, we've been talking about this year departure number. And you can see that it is back above average after the rainfall we've gotten at the beginning of this past week. However, not too much above average. It is hovering less than a quarter of an inch above where we should be at this point in 2025. But we're off to a very wet start for the month of December. So hovering somewhere in the neighborhood of 3/4 of an inch above what we averagely see, or what we see on average already just 4 days into the month of December. So all this data is taken as of December 4th, kind of recapping the year as a whole. We got off to a bit of a dry start in January and in February, and I imagine those totals in January, if we didn't have as much snow as we did, hard to believe that it's been almost a year since that did occur, then we probably would have gotten some more significant rainfall totals. However, that precipitation came in the frozen form. So we were seeing nearly 9 inches of snow in some areas in central Georgia. Imagine how that would have translated for some rainfall totals. February was also a rather dry month, nearly 2 inches below average. And then we were barely above average by about 1/2 an inch in March and in April. But then May and June definitely saw some above average rainfall. That put a good cushion on that number. And then we went into a very dry July before welcoming in the wettest month of the year that we've had so far, the month of August, 6 inches above what we typically see in terms of rainfall on average in the month of August. And then since then, it has been very quiet. September, October, and going into November, little to no rainfall has been recorded at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. We had a cushion about 7 inches above average for the year departure after the month of August, and we saw that go all the way back down to near average over the course of September, October, and November, about a 12-week span. But we're off to a pretty wet start in the month of December, and this is going along with what I was saying as of this past week, as of late last week. The month of December is set to be a pretty dreary one, and it looks like that's coming to fruition already with this latest update. So here's a look at your drought monitor that got released this past Thursday. In fact, we didn't really see much improvement in central Georgia. Take a look at the southeast United States. Looks like Tennessee and Kentucky have actually gotten their fair share of rainfall over the last couple of months. But down in southwest Georgia and northwestern Florida, you do see that patch of an exceptional drought. Good news is areas down here in the southeast corner of the United States are going to get their fill of rainfall over this weekend. But let's zoom in on central Georgia specifically. And the rainfall that we got early in the work week actually didn't improve our drought conditions at all. We did see the expansion of a severe drought, as a matter of fact, in areas farther up to the north. So everyone in central Georgia is now under drought conditions, whether that is going to be a moderate drought, a severe drought, or even portions of an extreme drought that are creeping into southern Chris County. Like I mentioned, we are going to be eagerly awaiting the update of the drought monitor as of this time next week, because I do imagine we will finally get the improvement of some of these drought conditions. But it's mainly going to be farther down to the south, and you'll see that when we talk about some of our rainfall totals that are forecasted for the rest of the weekend ahead. But over the last 48 hours, at the tail end and the beginning of this multi-day rain event, we've seen some totals that are impressive in some areas, but they are not found up in northern central Georgia. You can find some totals and maybe some pixels that I've grabbed that could get up to maybe about 2 inches, but that's only in isolated spots. Most of your totals up here in the northern half of central Georgia are going to be below an inch, so a couple tenths of an inch of rain, but we can find some spots where we say got 1.1 inches of rain, 1.9 inches of rain in Monroe and Jones counties, but everyone else falls below that 1 inch mark. But then you go down to the south, and the first thing that you're noticing, that blue color that you saw up to the north does get a lot darker. The darker the blue color gets, that's when you start to approach the green, and we do see patchy areas of green. So some isolated spots of maybe 1.5 inches of rain just west of Dublin, 1.6 inches of rain right on the county line of Houston and Dooley counties. But there are still our fair share of areas that have only gotten a couple tenths of an inch of rain. But like I said, this is just the beginning of this multi-day rain event. We'll talk about the totals we're still forecasting throughout the rest of this weekend to add on to those numbers and to add on to the rain that we've gotten at the beginning of this past work week. So rain for your Friday. If you caught the morning show on Friday morning, it is going to be on and off all throughout the duration of your Friday late afternoon time frame into the evening. And right now it does look like we are just going to mainly see scattered light and steady showers throughout the rest of Friday. This is 4 p.m. Not looking like the most ideal evening commute home from work, but it's just a nasty atmosphere out there. It is cold, and along with that, you have plenty of water that's still standing on the ground because of this gray. Widespread cloud cover, not too many gaps in it, so we're not going to get peaks of sunshine to allow for the evaporation of that water at the surface. So it's going to continue to stand until we can finally dry out for an extended period, or we can get some peaks of sunshine to allow for that water to go back up into the atmosphere in the form of evaporation. Remember your middle school science lessons, evaporation is going to be water that is in liquid form and that goes into gas form. So that's the change of state that we do see through the process of evaporation. But enough with the science lesson. We'll go down to our southernmost counties, and then you can see that once again, the main axis of rain this weekend is going to be farther down to the south. Still our fair share of on and off rain as we go into the nighttime hours. So what that means is you will have on periods of rain where it is steadily raining, maybe even heavily raining in some pockets. However, you're going to have the off periods, and that means that it's going to be a chilly and a mostly cloudy forecast during those off periods. But I think you want to keep the rain gear handy all throughout your Friday evening plans, because obviously just because the rain stops for a moment doesn't mean that it can't get going once again. And that's a big story that we do see overnight into early morning on Saturday. A mostly cloudy start, but hey, look at that. We finally have a break in the rain. So you may think, okay, we have mostly cloudy skies, but it looks like the rain chances are finally moving out. Just as quick as they moved out, they will be very quick to return. Here's 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. We do see light showers already starting to stretch into central Georgia as we go to 10 a.m. This is an important time, especially down in northern Houston County and Warner Robins. As of the taping of this, Warner Robins has not officially made a decision on their Christmas parade, but I do imagine it's not going to be some good news because this rain only gets more and more widespread starting in the late morning hours on Saturday and continuing into the afternoon. So it's mainly of the light shower variety, but some pockets of that darker green are going to be some steadier pockets of rain. But mainly we are looking at more widespread rain throughout Saturday as compared to the on and off pattern that we saw on Friday. And then we go into 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Very widespread, engulfing almost in all of central Georgia. The main axis of rain still a little bit farther down to the south, where you do see those flashes of yellow just to the south of central Georgia. But after it becomes widespread, engulfs all of us in central Georgia, we go into the late afternoon time frame. 5 p.m., we start to see cloud cover and rain receding down to the south, and it will continue to do so into the nighttime hours. Our southernmost counties are still holding on to a couple of light showers as you go into Saturday night. However, areas farther to the north, you are going to dry out a little bit quicker. So say right there around dinner time on Saturday, if you live up in Jasper, Monroe, Putnam, Lamar, Upson counties, you're going to see the rain leave a couple hours earlier than areas down to the south. And since they are holding on to that rain for a couple more hours, then that is going to result in some higher rainfall totals. Now to the good news. Let's go all the way into Sunday morning, 8 a.m., probably about the time that many of you are heading out the door to go to church. You will see a couple of these light green dots. I don't put too much stock into that, but it does highlight the potential for at least seeing some sprinkles or some spotty light showers. I think it's going to kind of be a story of mostly cloudy skies and maybe a bit of a mist, maybe even a bit of a light shower in some select few areas. It's not too substantial of a rain chance, and it's very likely just going to be short-lived. But continue to keep the rain jacket handy. All in all, 4 p.m. on Sunday, that's an important time we're looking out for as well, because that is going to be the downtown Macon Christmas parade. Right now it's looking like good news. Doesn't look like that rain is going to be present. That is going to be farther to the south of us. So in those areas we were just talking about in an extreme and an exceptional drought. So those areas could definitely use the rain a little bit more, say, than central Georgia, but obviously we definitely need our fair share of rain given the latest drought monitor. And then we progress into the nighttime hours. Still just looks like a mostly cloudy and a chilly day that is on tap for the end of the weekend. Monday at midnight. As we go into the beginning of next week, you do see rain chances now popping up to the north and the northwest. That's going to be ahead of a frontal boundary that's driving through. And as that frontal boundary drives through more so towards the beginning of next week, that's going to push all the rain out of the picture. But along with that, on the leading edge of that frontal boundary, it could also send us our fair share of mainly some widely scattered rain as we go into the beginning of the new work week next week. So how much rainfall are we going to add on to the totals that we've already seen? Remember, at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, just over 1.25 of an inch of rainfall that has been recorded in the month of December so far. Well, maybe not going to add too much to those totals, maybe start to flirt with that 2-inch mark, but that's halfway to average already for the month of December, and it is still only going to be, say, about 7 days into the month by the end of this Future View model run. But down to the south, you see those totals increasing steadily, closer to 1 inch in our southernmost counties and a few locations that are popping up another inch of rain, maybe even pockets in this purple color, up to 2 inches of rainfall that could be added on to the totals we've already seen. So hopefully this does provide at least the improvement of some drought conditions the farther south that you live. We're still going to need another rainmaker up to the north if we're only going to get this much more rain, about another 1/4 inch of rain in areas like Forsyth, Milledgeville, and all the way up to Sparta. So your weekend outlook, we do have a weather impact alert in place, and that's going to start on Friday evening and go all throughout the day on Saturday. And you may ask yourself, Alex, why is this weather impact alert just for that time frame? It's been raining since this past Thursday. Well, the weather impact alert is mainly driven by the fact that we have a lot of weekend festivities. If this was just a typical weekend, we didn't have too many events going on in central Georgia, it very likely wouldn't warrant a weather impact alert. But given the high volume of Christmas celebrations, whether that's a mistletoe market, whether that's going to be a Christmas parade or the lighting of a Christmas tree in the city center, most of those are planned out way ahead of time for the first weekend of December, and a lot of those happening after you get off of work on Friday and throughout the day on Saturday. But not just limited to those 2 days. We've already seen the rescheduling of many of these Christmas celebrations, like I mentioned, and we're very likely to see the rescheduling of more of them as we go into the future. So continue to stay updated on 13WMAZ.com. We have that wonderful web story that will tell you which events have been rescheduled, which events are still on, and maybe which events have just been canceled in general. In terms of your numbers, we'll talk about that for just a moment. 42 was the morning low temperature on Friday morning, and that's a little bit warmer than, say, what we saw Wednesday and Thursday mornings, where our temperatures got in the lower 30s. So there is a little bit of relief in terms of the morning lows that you're walking outside to. Not as blistering cold as some days we've seen over this recent stretch. However, the downside of this is we will have widespread cloud cover. That's what's causing these numbers to be above average, somewhere in the low to mid 40s. But your afternoon high temperatures, without too many peaks of sunshine, they're going to be somewhere a good mix of the 40s and the 50s. So I think for a majority of the weekend, daytime and nighttime, your numbers are going to be scattered about the 40s, but each and every afternoon we do have the potential to maybe climb into the low 50s. Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, and 55 degrees on Sunday, but these are still going to be well below average of 64 degrees, which is your average high temperature this time of year. And as we go into Sunday morning, I did mention that we start to see the receding of that cloud cover and rain as we go into Saturday evening, overnight into Sunday morning. Well, those brief moments of clearing could allow for a bit of a temperature drop. Should be the coldest morning out of any day in your short-term forecast on Sunday morning. And 20% chance of rain. Obviously, that's overshooting it according to what I just showed you on Future View, but I'm still maintaining a 20% chance, which is a very slim chance at rain at that for Sunday afternoon, just to cover any fluctuation we may see in between now and as we get into Sunday afternoon. So, weekend parade forecast. If you have plans to go visit a Christmas parade on Saturday, I would go ahead and have a backup plan. 53 and a really good chance of rain on Saturday, but I think it's a lot better likelihood that you can get your parade plans in as we go into Sunday. This is obviously the same forecast I just showed you. Wanted to put it on a fun graphic because I did remember that we have this weekend parade forecast. So the last thing people want is all those floats to get ruined. Last thing that you want to do is to be sitting out in a chilly and a dreary atmosphere. I do expect conditions to dry up a little bit, and we could see a peak of sunshine or two as we go into Sunday, but overall I would plan on a mostly cloudy forecast and still some chilly weather, even despite the fact that there may not be any rain in the forecast for the end of the weekend. But another big reason for the weather impact alert, Mercer is hosting an FCS playoffs game, the second round of the FCS playoffs, and they will be squaring off against South Dakota, who did beat Drake as of last weekend. But Mercer got one of those top 8 seeds, so Mercer is getting to host this game. 5-star stadium, if you have plans to go out there. I do imagine this game is going to continue to roll on as scheduled because we're not forecasting anything in the way of severe weather or anything in the way of lightning, rumbles of thunder. That would be the main thing causing a delay with some of these outdoor football games. These are just going to be some tough elements to play in, but maybe not quite as tough as, say, what they have up in South Dakota. It's probably widespread snow up there. So it's going to be chilly, it's going to be rainy, and I do believe that rain is going to get started the closer and closer to kickoff that you get. Right around the start of tailgate time, it might be a brief dry period, but still mostly cloudy and 50 degrees for a temperature, and then 50 degrees as you go into kickoff time, and temperatures dropping as you get into final score, and hopefully the Mercer Bears are moving on to very likely face the Montana Grizzlies. So I'm sure Mercer will definitely take this forecast if Montana is to advance and they are to advance, because then they have to take a trip all the way up to the northwest. And I imagine the temperatures up there are much, much colder than what we have forecasted here in central Georgia this weekend. But if you have plans to go up I-75, another Georgia team is squaring off, and that would be the Bulldogs. You see the red and black tie. Very excited for this matchup and very excited to get some revenge on the Crimson Tide. They will be squaring off at Mercedes-Benz Stadium up in Atlanta. It is a 4 p.m. kickoff, and very thankfully Mercedes-Benz is not going to have the roof open, but around tailgate time, that's the best chance of rain. So you may want to have the rain jacket if you have some outdoor tailgate plans before heading into the stadium, but then conditions should steadily clear up as you go into game time and then eventually final score. But it's going to be even colder up in Atlanta than it is back home in central Georgia. You should expect temperatures to start to flirt with the upper 30s as you're heading home, say around 8 p.m. So a cold and a clearer forecast, and sunset going to be at 5:28. So probably sometime in the middle of the second quarter when it does begin to get a little bit dark outside. And if you're behind everyone else, kind of like myself, and you're putting up some Christmas lights this weekend, play it by ear on Friday. You may have some moments of clearing that will allow you to get outside, but it's just going to be a messy and slick environment. So make sure that you have some shoes with good traction if you are climbing up on the ladders, and make sure that you have a towel of some sorts and all the rain gear. However, Saturday, I am expecting that widespread rain in the afternoon. Not too heavy in nature, but that's not a forecast that you want for putting up the lights. And we know that the rain can cause some complication with putting up those lights. Sunday, I think, is going to be the best day for putting them up. Just a mostly cloudy atmosphere, maybe a brief shower or two, but just make sure that you have the towel handy and ready to go to try to dry off some surfaces to prevent you from slipping, especially climbing up on the ladder, like I said. Play it by ear with your grill cast for both Friday and Saturday. We could see some clearing if you're grilling out farther to the north on Saturday evening. Then yes, obviously you're looking good to go. However, if you live farther down to the south, you have some grill out plans. Saturday is more than likely going to be a night that you want to order in. So I might suggest some catering if you have any watch parties for Championship Saturday in college football. And then Sunday, the best of the bunch once again. Fire up the grill. I think it's going to be a mostly cloudy atmosphere as opposed to a dreary atmosphere, and it will continue to be chilly. So that flame from the grill will probably feel very, very nice, along with all of your fireplaces and maybe some hot cocoa this weekend. That's what this weekend's weather is looking like the perfect forecast for. So my recommended attire is basically the same Friday through Sunday. The only exception is you'll want to have the rain gear for both Friday and Saturday, and you might do without it on Sunday, but I still think it's probably the wise decision to have the rain gear ready to go in case you need it, in case you run across maybe a scattered light shower or two. So let's pick it up with the long-range models. Beginning of next week, our frontal boundary starts to drive in from the north and the northwest. We still have some scattered shower chances according to both models, not necessarily overlapping, but my rain chances for Monday are relatively slim as well. GFS says some spotty showers could linger into the afternoon and evening hours. European is not putting too much stock into that idea. All in all, they both are saying the same thing as we go into next Tuesday and Wednesday. We will dry out and we will finally get some peaks of sunshine in your forecast, and that will go about for most of the midweek. We go into Thursday where we could start to see an increase in cloud cover, but still probably a partly cloudy day that's going to be on tap. Nothing really impressive in the way of rain chances, but then another weather maker. A frontal boundary tries to drive in towards the end of the work week next week. Still a lot of fine tuning to do with this forecast, obviously. The GFS is the only one picking up on widespread rain in the southeast United States. So we'll play it by ear. We'll continue to keep you posted. We'll cross that bridge once we get there. Obviously, this weekend's forecast is going to be more of concern and obviously of more importance than what's going to happen at the end of next week. But some of you may be trying to get an early peek at what those rescheduling plans are looking like in terms of your forecast. But right now, not seeing anything definitive in the way of rain chances. It's looking a lot better towards the end of the work week next week as opposed to what's in store for the next 2 days on Friday and Saturday. So your morning low temperatures, 41 on Monday, not quite seeing too much of a cool down. It's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday that we finally start to feel those frigid cold temperatures once again. This is number one because we finally have the clearing and cloud cover. But remember I said a frontal boundary is going to push all of that rain out of the picture. What comes in behind frontal boundaries? That is cooler and drier air. So it's going to cool us down for a brief period at the beginning of the midweek. And then as we start to get an increase in cloud cover towards the second half of the work week next week, your morning low temperatures go back closer to average as we roll into Thursday morning. Afternoon high temperatures, each and every day, it still looks like they're going to be somewhere below average, but finally making the return and seeing a bit of a warming trend as we go into Wednesday and into Thursday next week. 63 degrees for a high temperature on Thursday. That is right on par with average. And in fact, we go back to that last graphic I showed you. 39 was your morning low on Thursday. That's exactly at average, but we could see some fluctuation with those numbers as this is still about 6 to 7 days out in the future. In terms of your temperature outlook past that, so December 12th all the way through the 18th, getting right on the cusp of Christmas with this temperature outlook. And it does look like maybe a slight probability of some areas seeing some below normal temperatures. Overall, I think your numbers should be somewhere in the low 60s for highs and somewhere maybe in the low 40s to the upper 30s for morning low temperatures, maybe even a tad bit cooler as we go into this extended period. Areas back over to the west have a good probability of seeing above normal temperatures, but this is a pretty fine gradient that we do see. So we very well could see those above normal temperatures creep over here, or we could see the probability of below normal temperatures push down back into the south and the southwest, not seeing any signs of a very dreary and cold stretch that ahead for your extended forecast as opposed to what we have been going through and what's in store this weekend. And because of this, your precipitation outlook, slight probability of below normal precipitation. So maybe finally entering a dry stretch, and this would make sense. This would lead to a steady warm up if we don't have any of those wide-scale weather makers impacting our forecast in the form of rain and maybe ushering in some cooler and drier air behind them. So looking ahead, I actually had to change all of these boxes because last time I did one of these was before Thanksgiving. So we've obviously had all those events and dates that we were looking forward to around the Thanksgiving holiday. All of those have passed. So here's what is ahead. The first day of winter. Yes, believe it or not, we haven't kicked off the first day of astronomical winter. However, we have entered meteorological winter, which is typically an unofficial start to the cooler portion of the year. That actually started on December 1st, and obviously we have welcomed it in with very appropriate feeling weather. But then Christmas Eve, just 19 days away. Christmas Day is 20 days away. If you're watching this Saturday or if you're watching this on Sunday, both of those dates are going to be a day or two earlier. So getting in the neighborhood of just under 3 weeks away from the Christmas holiday. And then after Christmas, you have to turn around very quickly. New Year's Eve, 26 days away. So we have about 26 to 27 days left in 2025. So hard to believe that we're about to be entering 2026. This year has flown by, but it's also gone by very slowly, if you know what I mean. And we wrapped up hurricane season this past Sunday. So November 30th was the last day of the Atlantic hurricane season. Here are your final numbers, which have not changed week by week, really over the last 4 weeks that I've shown this graphic. We clocked 13 named storms this year in the Atlantic Basin, which fell one number below average and 4 storms below what was forecasted by Colorado State. 5 of which did strengthen into hurricane status, so below average and well below average what was forecasted. And then 4 of those 5 hurricanes reached major hurricane status, category 3 or higher. And of those 4 major hurricanes, we actually had 3 that were category 5 status. So we did have some implications down in the Caribbean. However, here back at home in the United States, we had 0 landfalling hurricanes, that is. We had 1 tropical storm make landfall up in the Myrtle Beach area, and that was around 4th of July, Tropical Storm Chantal, which did lead to some flooding concern in areas of northern North Carolina. However, other than that, we saw less impacts from this year's hurricane season as opposed to last. That is never a bad thing in our line of business, especially given how drastic the impacts were from last year's hurricane season. So your weather impact alert is going to go for Friday evening through all day on Saturday. We have elected not to go forward with it extending into Sunday because the rain chances are looking very slim. Doesn't look like the chilly rain is going to really be of impact for any weekend plans that you have outdoors. However, if we are to see some change with this as we go into the weekend, maybe see the rain chances increase, that could have implications for that downtown Macon Christmas parade. We would extend this into Sunday. But as of right now, that is not what we are seeing. On and off chilly rain is of course going to be your impact. And along with that, these weather impact alerts. You may see the word alert and you may get alarmed and it may catch your attention and you may think we have the potential for some severe weather. We don't issue these all the time for just solely severe storms or tropical systems. We issue these when weather is going to impact your daily routine or any of your plans that you do have. And obviously with the high volume of plans ahead this weekend, that is why we do have this weather impact alert in place for just simply a chilly rain that is mainly going to be in the form of light showers. However, you want to exercise caution on the roads if you are having plans to drive out and about in central Georgia or heading out of town. Make sure that you dress warm and grab the rain gear. Like I mentioned, that Mercer game, very unlikely to get canceled. So obviously, if you still want to show your support for the Bears, you're going to brave those elements. Make sure that you're wearing some layers and underneath all the rain gear. So I think a poncho might be your best choice of attire if you are planning on sitting for an extended period of a couple of hours on the bleachers at Five Star Stadium. Not going to be the most conducive forecast, but hopefully Mercer is going to play into those elements and pull out a big W. Keep an eye on your event status. Like I said, 13WMAZ.com is going to be your go-to for all the information that you need with those Christmas celebrations this weekend. And Friday at 1 p.m., that's when we're expecting the announcement of the Warner Robins Christmas Parade. If you have any plans to head outdoors over the course of this weekend, just make sure you have that rain gear. Umbrella, poncho, rain boots, rain jacket, whatever you need to combat the rain for an extended period of time that you will be spending outside. Otherwise, I think it's a perfect weekend to curl up under a blanket, get those Christmas PJs on, turn on the fireplace, pour some hot cocoa, and simply enjoy a Christmas movie marathon with your friends and your family. Thanks for tuning in for your weekend extended forecast. We'll be back on Monday at 11 a.m. for a look at what's ahead for the work week next week. Until then, stay updated with David Guerrero and Ansley Parker over the course of this weekend.